A very good morning, everyone. I hope I'm audible to you. Good morning, Subham, Hemant, Dhananjay. I hope all of you are doing great and healthy. And I also hope कि आप लोगों ने पढ़ा होगा जो भी मैंने कल पढ़ाया था. Hemant, I'm doing good. I'm absolutely fine. So, good morning, Ankit. So, today we'll start with one other important relationship that is flourishing for some time now. Ankit, I'm very good. You can see I'm healthy and I'm doing absolutely fine. Good morning, Sivangi. So here we start with one more important aspect. Sazil, everything is great and a very good morning. Today we'll be talking about India-Japan relations. This is the topic that we are going to cover now. And these kind of relationships have become more important as our relations with China is deteriorating. And all these countries are facing difficulty in one way or the other with respect to China only. A very good morning, Asu. So this relationship goes beyond rest of other relationships only because there was a time. Good morning, Aman. Good morning, Amit. There was a time when Japan was the flag bearer of Asia. It was one of the most industrialized nation. Good morning, Krishna. I'm fine. And it was taking head on the colonial powers that were before. Of course, it has also colonial aspirations. But it was one country which was very different in Asia and which was developing fast. And it had to see some of the circumstances which impeded its growth for a brief period of time when it was attacked by bombs, but still it is one of the most progressive states of the world. So there is a lot of things that India can learn from Japan. So since inception, since independence, in fact even before that, our leaders always showed support for Japan. After the First World War, when international military tribunal trials were going on, one of the justices was Radha Vinod Pal. He favored Japan. And for this event, Japanese people were really, really grateful to India for supporting their cause at that point in time. So during international military tribunal trials after World War II. Okay? Justice Pal supported Japanese cause. As Japan was devastated after the Hiroshima-Nagasaki bombing events, India sent 2 elephants to Tokyo so that it can cheer up the defeated Japanese Empire. So in 1949, India sent 2 elephants to Japan, to Tokyo Zoo, to cheer up defeated Japanese. Okay. So India wanted to have a good relationship with Japan, though at that point in time Japan was not in a condition to establish any kind of relationship because international military tribunal trials were happening. Also, Francisco Peace Conference was called to talk about the future of Japan. And India always said that Japanese people have right to decide their own future. But in 1951, in the year 1951, without heeding to what some of the countries like India has to say, the Francisco Peace Conference took place. Peace Conference imposed limitations on Japan. India opposed this. India was among the first which opposed. Yeah, Dhananjaya, just to greet the people to the zoo so that Japanese people can go to the zoo and have some leisure time so that they can get away from the disastrous things that has happened and it was impacting their psychology. So India wanted to cheer them up, okay? And we had nothing much to offer at that point in time. We were independent shortly before and we were seeking help from others. So other kind of help from a country like India at that point in time was neither expected nor it was possible for India to do any of that. And again in 1952, Japan and India signed a peace treaty. In 1952, Japan and India signed the peace treaty. And India was amongst the first because most of the nations were not favor of signing any treaty with Japan. But India came forward and signed a peace treaty. And with this peace treaty, it started an era where India provided iron ore to Japan to recover from the devastation of World War. India provided iron ore to Japan to rebuild its devastated cities. And of course, it was not some kind of free help. But most of the nations were averse to having any kind of relationship with Japan at that point in time. And India had iron ore reserves, so it offered. After the peace treaty, we started supplying the iron ore to Japan. Asu, we started with the relationship. A very good morning first to you. And we started with India-Japan relations, and we were talking about this thing only, how international military tribunal trials happened against Japan, where Indian Justice Radha Vinod Pal favored Japan. Thereafter, 51, India sent elephants. In 1949, India opposed to sanctions on Japan in 1951, San Francisco Peace Conference. And now here we are in 1952, where India and Japan signed a peace treaty. And thereafter, of course, we started sending iron ore to Japan. Okay, so this is the brief review. You haven't missed much. And after that, in 1957, the condition of India was not good. But Japan, being an industrial nation, though it has seen devastation, but it has monetary reserves. Japan provided loans to India. And you must remember that Japan was not very free even at that point in time, because most of its foreign relations were influenced by USA. It was forced to align with USA, right? It did not had an open foreign policy, sovereign foreign policy. USA was influencing each and everything. But still, Japan came forward in need of India and provided loan to India. But hereafter, the same story, aligned versus non-aligned. And Japan kept a safe distance from India. It has seen devastation, and it didn't wanted to get involved in any kind of problems. Okay? So it chose not to align with any of those countries where US interests were hampered. But still in 1980s, India with its locust policy, reached out to Japan, and some sort of relations continued. But both these countries were not fully cooperating in the world affairs. Neither we were having a lot of trade at that point in time. In 1998, of course, you know, Pokhran, nuclear tests by India. And Japan has seen the devastation of nuclear attacks. Aman, I had explained this thing yesterday also. Aligned and non-aligned, I want you to look at the first few lectures to understand this. I'll explain this in one line. That non-aligned means a country will not align to any military groups like CETO and NATO. These are some of the groups which US had made. So the countries which favored USA joined those military groups. The non-aligned countries did not join that group. Okay? Aligned are the people who went with those military groups, non-aligned who did not go. So if you want to get some more details, just check the previous lectures. We had a lot of discussion over this thing. Okay? So Japan had faced this thing. Okay? it was devastated. So in no way it was going to allow any country to go for the nuclear tests. So Japan put sanctions on India. It was one among the first, even before USA had planned of doing this thing. Japan said that it won't keep any kind of relationship with any country which is going for nuclear development. And this was a period for 3 years the relationship was suspended, but Japan lifted the sanctions after 3 years. Sanctions after 3 years, it was in 2001, and they started engaging with India. And of course, you know why it was doing it? Because US wanted it. It was the only time when USA endorsed India's nuclear policy as well. Okay, USA wanted to have good relations with India. So of course, whoever were aligned to USA started having good relations with India because of the US policy. Since our present Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, he became the Prime Minister, high-level visits started. And it is the same time when China has started asserting itself more. China was having good relations with a country, a rogue country like North Korea. It was sending rockets all around in the Pacific Ocean. And Japan was afraid. Being caught between some rogue nations is always a difficult story, like India is also facing because of Pakistan. So high-level visits started between these two countries. And this visit also ensured that our relationship was upgraded to a special strategic global partnership. A special strategic global partnership. Agreement was signed in the very same year. And these diplomatic ties ensured that Japan, which is a country which always opposes the nuclear programs of any of the countries, in 2016, we had an agreement on peaceful usage of nuclear energy. India and Japan signed an agreement on peaceful usage of nuclear energy. And it was a big fate for India, because Japan was a country which would have never ever signed an agreement with any of the countries if it has not conceived that country as a peaceful country. So they were very much aware that India is not going to misuse such nuclear powers, nuclear weapons, and hence they signed this agreement. And to sum up the relationship that we have after 2016, a recent statement by our Foreign Minister Jaishankar is very relevant. He said that India's partnership with Japan is most natural in the region. A very good morning, Mani. Good morning, Yati. India's partnership is most natural with Japan is most natural with Japan in that region. So this statement in itself sums up the relationship that these two countries are enjoying now. The things have literally improved a lot. There is an environment of trust and belief, and both these countries are looking forward to further the relationship that we have been enjoying. Okay, so though we are partners in Quad, we are partners in some of the talks related to South China Sea, but still, of course, any nascent relationship like we had discussed, most of the nations look forward to India as a big market and they want to benefit from that. Security has become a concern for some of the people surrounding China, and the next big country which can take on China is India, economically as well as militarily. We can inflict a lot of damage to each other, though you cannot say that India will win if we went to a war with China, but of course both the countries have potential of damaging a lot, and we cannot sail together but we can sink together. This is the relationship between India and China. So we'll look at the economic aspect of the relationship first, and then we'll move to some other aspects. At this point in time, Japan happens to be the infrastructure projects with the help of Japan, the bullet train project. Yeah, if the times were good, it could have been in progress, but for last 2 years, the COVID situation is not allowing to do normal things to people. What the people of India will do with that bullet train? Most of the trains are cancelled even today. Last year, they were not working. And the economic condition of India, of course, if you are reading newspapers, is not very good. People are opposing the infrastructure projects that are going on. So the government cannot focus on such things because they have to take care of the raging COVID scenario. Okay. So Japan is the third largest investor in Indian economy, but I'll write one of the largest because who knows, in few months' time the position changes, but it's been third for a very long period of time, but still we'll go with this statement. If you talk about today, the data, the most recent data suggests that it is the third largest investor in Indian economy, and it is one of the largest trading partner as well. Okay, 12th largest, but we'll write it is one of the largest trading partner for India. So in investment, if some of you are appearing this year, means you can write third, and it is 12th. But for someone who is appearing maybe next year, you need to check this thing, because these things keep changing. Economic aspects are dynamic. They'll keep changing. So check and upgrade your notes. And if we look at the number of companies operating in India from Japan, 1,300 plus companies of Japan are working in Indian market. So this is a Ravi will be focusing on some more relations. We'll look at Africa, we'll look at Australia, we'll look at South America as well. But on those things, I'll be talking about only those aspects which are important for this year. Because whole of those nations, we don't want. We, of course, don't want. Like if we talk about Africa, only Horn of Africa is important at this point in time. Okay? All of Africa, each country relations, we don't want. But Horn of Africa is continuously in news, so it is important this year. Likewise, we want to read a relationship with Brazil because it is part of many of the groupings. So we'll be looking at those aspects. And I'll be telling you how to pick those things. It is not necessary to see the relationship of India with more than 180 countries. You cannot do that. But some of the important countries will look, and some of those countries which are in news, okay, which are time and again in news. It is not like some country is news for only one instance, then we'll read that. If it is in news again and again, and then we'll have a look at the relationships, okay. In 2011, we had Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. And in fact, it is the only comprehensive agreement that has decided to reduce almost 94% of the tariffs. Okay? So this is a very important relationships. What this has done? Both the countries have decided to reduce the tariffs on almost 94% of the items of trade. In next 10 years. Okay? So this is a very special relationship. A very good afternoon, Prabhat. You have joined late. Still, go through the part that you have missed and try to understand some of the things that we are discussing now. Okay? So, both these countries have decided to reduce tariffs on almost 94% of the things, and it is one of the very unique comprehensive economic partnership agreement signed between these two countries, because India is mostly averse to the idea of doing this thing. India wants to keep some of the tariffs so that it can save the local market, but Japan, a highly developed nation, provides us with some of the things that we are not very much efficient in, and it wants something from us which their market is not producing. So it was really easy for India to go for almost 95%, 94% of the things. Okay. The other aspect we'll be talking about is the cultural aspect. Not much to discuss, but still some of the aspects we'll see, because these are the relationships in making. Okay. These relationships are still in the nascent stages and are always influenced by the relationship of any country with USA. So you never know what will happen next, but still we have to be like watchful about such things. So Buddhist culture is a direct connect. Okay. So Japan is investing in, Japan is indulged with Nalanda University, that is in Bihar. It is also maintaining the structures in Ajanta and Ellora, that is in Maharashtra. Strong Buddhist ties. Saksham is, this is like interactive. Many of the students are asking question. You can also, right? You have freedom to ask whatever you want. If it was a regular teaching classroom, then of course we could have done that, and you have freedom. Many of your friends are asking questions, and in fact most of them even mentioned that they are okay with this thing. But if you are facing any difficulty, you have freedom. You need to ask instead of instructing me how to teach, right? If you have any queries, you can ask. This is not a story session, neither it is a history class where we have lot of stories. Whatever is important, I'm teaching you. Okay. We talked about how we help Japanese. So these are all stories. What more story do you want? So I teach a lot of students, and I've been doing this thing for a long time. So I know how to interact, how to teach people. And if you have any queries, feel free to ask. But don't tell me to tell stories that ain't is part of syllabus. Neither you'll be writing those stories in your mains. So we are talking about the cultural ties. So Buddhist culture. So anybody else who have any issues, feel free to discuss. It is for you only. If you are understanding everything well, then my purpose is served. If most of you are doing that. Okay. I'm just focusing on things which can make you an IAS officer. Okay. I don't waste time. Maybe some other people feel like doing that. I'm not wasting any of the times. I'm very, very clear about how I am approaching. And I know when the courses will be over, when you'll be writing your mains, whatever I'm doing, you'll be admiring that more because you'll have concrete stuff in your notes. Unlike some of the stories which will vanish with time. Okay? So let's focus on the things that are important. And I'm pretty sure that these things will literally help you. I indulged with you in answer writing and all because I understand this aspect. Why I always write in heads. The sole purpose is that you understand how to write your answers as well. And this is very, very important. Okay? Just making some notes will not help you. Because reading any of the books that are available, you can clear prelims. But what about mains? Prelims, you don't need any help. Mains, of course, you cannot clear until your approach is very, very clear. Right? A good understanding and a good approach of writing. That shall come with organization. Your answer, the structure is really important. So I structure all the things for you. The only thing which you'll require is using these structures as per the demand of question. Okay? So maybe after completion of the course, we'll keep a day for the stories. Okay? But one thing I can guarantee you, whatever I am telling you is going to make sure that you'll fetch more marks than any of the other students who have a different approach. Sazil, answer writing. I'm going to take 2 sessions of answer writing very soon. I'll inform you all, okay? It will be specifically on answer writing only, related to any of the subjects. That will make things pretty easy for you. So, I'll do that. Don't be worried. But let's now focus on this thing. The subject matter of international relations. And it is my promise within few days only. Within this week, I'll declare a date where we'll be interacting over answer writing. Okay? So let's focus on this thing. The other aspect is, of course, our apart from the Buddhist culture, the movies and theaters. Okay? This movies from India are famous in Japan. And vice versa. Okay? Yeah, Devam, I'll be talking about a general approach about writing and I'll inform you all. It will work for each and every subject, whatever I'm going to discuss in those things, and it will be outside these classes, means it will not be part of these classes. I'll take some time out separately and I'll inform you about it. Okay? Don't be worried about this. I'm pretty serious about whatever I do. So if I am investing time on you, I'll make sure that you are efficient in each and every aspect. I'll teach you that as well. So don't be worried. Movies from India are famous in Japan. So this is some of the cultural aspects that we have to discuss. And if something appears in news, then of course you have to focus. And the other aspect with China factor, with the Indo-Pacific factor, of course, this relationship is important with respect to defense as well, the security of the region. Okay, so we'll be talking about the defense and security aspect. Okay, so defense and security, of course, recently with the role of China we are active, but since 2008 we had direct engagement with respect to defense and security of India. In 2008 we had a pact, we had an agreement about this, and both these countries gave a joint declaration on defense and security. It means that we have intentions of helping each other whenever there is a problem between two countries. Okay? So, Japan and India will stand for each other. This is the intent. We have also focused on the China. Both countries are cooperating with each other on aspects related to China, Indo-Pacific region, because this region is important for both the countries. So we'll be focusing on that. If specifically you have to talk about something, we know Quad, which has to play a big role now. Okay? So here we are cooperating more, and since the inception of Quad, the two countries are engaging more. So a lot of things will be in news related to this thing. So you need to follow the news and add to it. If something very specific is happening between these two countries, of course you need to make a mention of it. But okay, if we talk about some other aspect, we did not talk about the people to people connect, because that's not happening much. If you do not have anything else to write in the current affairs, then we can talk about the people to people connect or diaspora, because we have only around 30,000 people in Japan. Okay, so that's not much of a population. So we do not talk about these aspects on priority basis. But if in answer you fail to get any other point, you can talk about it. And like we had discussed nuclear, peaceful nuclear usage. So you can talk about energy aspect. Though Japan was victim of nuclear bombing, but still it is a developed, very advanced nation technologically. So it is helping India with some of the aspects related to nuclear, right? So Japan has plans of building nuclear reactors for India. Building nuclear reactors for India. And most probably the project will come up in Andhra. It was the plan, and until and unless it is executed. Pratyus, if whenever you are writing an answer about, let's say you are asking about India and France, so whenever you are doing this thing, you have to always consider the time factor, space factor. If you think that if you'll write two statements about the past and it will eat up some different aspect, then you should avoid doing that. Directly focus on some of the contemporary things. You can write like the relationship between these two countries is with respect to space, like recently, and mention that. That will be more than sufficient. Like I said, I'll be taking the session, then we'll talk about this thing. You can ask as many questions about answer writing that day. Now let's focus on this thing. And mistakenly I have written Japan's. It has to be Japan. Okay. So energy aspect, nuclear aspect is really important. And now renewable energy, Japan is also keen to invest in renewable energy. So we can expect a lot of investment from Japan in the coming times. And the other aspect, infrastructure, of course. Connectivity, we'll take them together. So JICA is the agency. Japan Investment Corporation Agency. Okay. That is the agency which takes care of most of the investment related decisions related to Japan with all the countries with which it has a relation. So if we talk about some of the things that Japan has did, initially it was giving assistance to India in late 1950s. Japan used to give developmental assistance to India. Like we had seen in 1957-58, it has given loans to India. So now it has invested heavily. Japan has invested heavily in many projects in India. Okay. Of course, like dedicated freight corridor project, industrial corridors. Industrial corridor, smart city projects, bullet train, and what not. Everything. We have, it has in fact helped India with managing the islands, Andaman and Nicobar Islands as well. Because if you look at map, you know Japan is island. So it is also helping with managing islands. Okay. And they are cooperating with disaster related infrastructure, especially earthquakes. You must be aware that Japan is a country which has earthquake every few minutes. They are into habit of this thing. And so their structures are really resistant towards earthquakes. It is in the Pacific Ring of Fire that you must have read in geography. Western dedicated freight corridor, industrial corridors, you must have dealt with these things in geography while dealing with industries. So I'm pretty sure that you are aware of this thing. So this is another area where all are cooperating. These two countries are cooperating. So this is that is important aspect between these two countries. And if something is in news, because the contemporary aspect is, yeah, Protyus, tsunamis are also, so I have disaster related infrastructure we have talked about. And as a special case, I have mentioned earthquakes. Okay, Divam, then you'll be learning many things. Things will be discussed then. Things are going to be very, very clear. So whenever it will be completed, you'll understand some of the things which may occur to you that is new, right? So you'll get a complete picture when you are done with that. Now we'll look at one more relationship from that region only, which has always influenced the cultural aspects of our northeastern states, which is also one of the most developed countries technologically. And the role of which country was also very much glorified in containing the COVID situation. Yes, I am talking about South Korea. These are some of the best examples how a country can develop even after seeing a lot of sectarian strifes. North Korea and South Korea kept on fighting. Today, North Korea is a disaster. whereas South Korea is a role model. So the type of governance, the type of policies that their government implemented, they made sure that they are one of the most dominant developed countries in the region. Unfortunately, India doesn't share a great rapport with that country, and this is a cause of concern. Even with a lot of economic investment in India, our diaspora is not very treated well in that country, and it has always been a point of conflict between these two countries. So we'll be discussing now India-South Korea relations, which is one of the important relations that will become more important in the coming future, because now all the countries are going away from China and they are inclined to join hands with India, because these countries are technologically very developed, but they have to sell their products somewhere. Okay? In fact, Japan and South Korea are two countries where their population have left doing some of the menial jobs. They completely rely on outside population for some of those activities. Okay? So it is really, really important that we understand, because we are a labor surplus country, and we are our population, our diaspora is reaching out to each and every country to solve their problems with respect to human resource. Okay? So now we'll look at India and South Korea. It was only in the year 1973 that we had established diplomatic ties. The infighting between South Korea and North Korea, the US influence, and the disastrous things that happened did not let India to establish a good relationship until 1973. It was in 1973. And in 1974, we signed agreements on cooperation for trade and technology. Cooperation related to most of the things that has been since then was largely focused on the economic relationship. These two countries never ever tried to establish any relationship beyond that. The reason being the reluctance from South Korea. Okay? They are very averse to the idea that India and Korean population can have cultural relations, they can mingle. Though India has protested a lot, we saw no changes in their attitude. 1985, double taxation avoidance agreement. Okay, double taxation avoidance agreement happened in 1997. Asian financial crisis. And this is the year which forced South Korea to focus on Indian markets. This event, okay, it focused on capturing the Indian markets because it was finding it difficult to sell in any of the other countries, because whole of Asia was going through this Asian financial crisis. So Korea turned to capture Indian market. Okay, and this was the time, 1998, nuclear. Amit, DTAA is part of economy, double taxation avoidance agreement, so I'll not be going into details of it. It's part of your economics syllabus, but it's still, like yesterday I had told you that this is about the core principle is that one entity should not be taxed at two places for the same activities, for same economic activities. Okay, सक्षम एक ही बार में साइन इसलिए नहीं कर लेते हैं क्योंकि एक से रिलेशंस नहीं है, ना ही उसकी जरूरत है. इन सम with some of the countries we do not have such economic engagements which will require our population to be taxed at both places, and taxing at one place and giving sending to other place will take a lot of time. Amit, an example is of any of the business entity doing if it is indulged in export and import, and it is making benefits from the trade in both countries and paying the taxes in one country for those gains only, then it will have to pay in one country only, where it will be residing for most of the time. Like we have such agreements with Mauritius, Singapore, okay, and of course now we have seen that with South Korea as well. So if we are engaged with some of the countries in trade and related aspects where there is transfer of money and there are provisions of taxation, so such entities or individuals shouldn't be taxed doubly. So we'll be avoiding that. Okay, it is part of economics, double taxation avoidance agreement. So we were talking about South Korea in 1997, and in 2011, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Now, as we all know, because of the situations in the South China Sea, in the Indo-Pacific region, every country is looking beyond China. So South Korea has come up with a policy of looking south. So it calls its policy as New Southern Policy. So New Southern Policy of South Korea. It declared this policy, and now we have Act East Policy of India. Both are converging, and so these two countries are focusing on increasing the ties. Like I said, not lot is happening between these countries, but after this agreement and a clear strategic policy of these two countries, there is a lot of convergence happening. Like in 2018, South Korea's Samsung established world's largest cell phone assembly setup in Noida in India. Of course, you know that such setups were only being developed in China by most of the countries, being it from European countries, American countries, or even some of its own developed neighbors. They were more keen to do such things in China. But as they are facing territorial threats, they want to make sure that they are investing in some of the areas from where their investment will remain safe. Okay? So they are looking forward for this thing to India. And as China factor is playing out of proportion, in 2020, Indian Army Chief visited South Korea, signaling deepening defense ties. So now these two factors are dictating the relationship of South Korea with India. Initially, they were not very keen to have any kind of relationship with India. But in 2018, the Dokala event, Doklam, it ensured that India is not afraid of China and India can stand by China. And if stand against China, and if India is backed by some of the nations, then definitely India will give befitting reply to China. So since then, most of the countries like Japan, South Korea, some of the smaller island nations of the Pacific Ocean, all of them have started establishing good relations with India. All of them have started talks about defense relationship with India, only because they know that alone they cannot fight China. Neither they have resources nor they have a population which can challenge that, the dominance of China. But India, along with these countries, of course, can neutralize many of the aspects. Signal dena, Asu, indicating. Signaling means indicating, telling indirectly कि ऐसा हो रहा है. Okay? So this is the background that you need to know. And very recently, if you are following the newspapers, since your course has begun, you must be aware that they have openly declared to cooperate in development of the military hardware. Okay? 2021, both countries declared cooperation in development of military hardware. So suddenly the relationship has shifted towards defense requirements of the countries. Okay? So their changing political, geopolitical situation have compelled them to come to India. But unfortunately, they have certain designs, like most of the countries aligned with USA had. They want two things from India. First is money, and second is money only, indirectly on pretext of something else. So this defense deals, of course, they know that India doesn't have the technology. So what South Korea wanted to do, it wanted to sell the air defense system to India. But India initially had accepted this thing. But very recently, India focused more on Make in India, and that too in defense sector. So India cancelled the air defense system deal. So more recently, India cancelled the air defense system deal with Korea to focus on Make in India. Okay? And you can see they had declared cooperation. So instead of cooperating in India, now they are not happy. Why? Because selling this system could have fetched them billions. But helping India to develop this thing here only will not profit them to that extent. So they are unhappy. So South Korea unhappy. But India is also aware that they cannot do much. They want help of India if they want to sustain in that area. So India will not fall to their tactics. Okay? So this is the aspect which is very, very important. Now we'll talk about these aspects. The most focused aspect in this relationship is going to stay the economic aspect and the defense aspect. Rest of the aspects will emerge based on the contemporary situations only. So we'll start with the economic aspect. So you must always keep in mind whenever you are writing something related to this thing, you have to project the idea that the relationship between these countries have not developed like it has developed between India, Soviet, like India and France for that matter. These relations are solely based on the desire of those countries to capture the Indian market, to benefit from India. So whenever we are into talks, such things always crop up, and it does not allow to materialize a relationship which can be long lasting. So India also has to be cautious. You have to mention such things. Yeah, technology, Yati, it has the defense technology. India is, of course, a lot more interested in that. Their technological innovations. In fact, if you are looking at Samsung, LG, and all of them, they have manufacturing units. That is only we are going to discuss. So, in a way, they are selling the products only. Of course, they have provided employment to our people, but such big companies do not try to get involved with some of the Indian agencies. In fact, what they have done, they have invested. These multinational companies have invested directly in setting up their own units. They assemble, they manufacture, they sell. But India as a country is directly not benefiting from getting the technology using which we can develop that, right? And they have been doing this thing for last 3 decades. So they are more at benefit, right? So in this part, we'll be looking at this only. The economic aspect, as I have spoken about the companies. So more than 500 Korean companies. Wherever I am writing Korea, it should remind you that we are talking about South Korea only, right? 500 Korean companies in India. The likes of Samsung, LG, etc. Okay? So these companies, they are very popular. You'll find their products in every home. In one form or another, you'll definitely find these things. So they are benefiting. And like we had seen, we have comprehensive economic partnership agreement as well. And if we talk about in last 2 decades, South Korea has investments in India to the tune of 4.5 billions. So of course they have invested a lot in India in only 20 years. This is a lot of investment. And it has also pledged a lot of investment in infrastructure projects. Promised investments in infrastructure projects. In Chhattisgarh, Telangana, and Maharashtra. Okay, it has declared that it will be investing this much of amount in India, some more amount. Saksham, yeah, the whole world sees India as a place of cheap labor and a big market. So no, in a way, it doesn't demean India, right? It is the surplus labor force that most of the countries are not having. Like we are discussing about Japan and South Korea, their growth rate is negative. If it is not a sustainable growth rate of population, their labor force will keep on declining. It is as near to 0.2%, and the sustainable level of fertility should be at least 2.1. So they will have to acquire labor from somewhere. And cheap labor, whenever anything is in plenty, it will be cheap, right? Like Bangladesh today, if you have read the newspaper recently, few days back only, their per capita income increased more than India. And it was it was driven by textile industry for Bangladesh. And cheap labor is the case, but per capita income, this cheap labor will become a cause of their development. So you shouldn't feel like India is being demeaned for this thing. If somebody wants our population to work there, we are valued. But some of the countries, as they are paying money, so of course they are not treating our citizens well. And okay, so this economic aspect, they are also helping with Skill India mission. And if we talk about this expressway, Mumbai-Nagpur expressway, this is the project that it is taking. Mumbai-Nagpur expressway. But my suggestion is, the year you are appearing, take that example. Yeah, Adi, a lot of manufacturing units. I said 500, right? I wrote 2 names only. So you can choose to replace some of the names. There are as many as 500 companies working in India. So you're free to choose your examples. Okay? Now the other important aspect is defense. Here South Korea is keen to capture share of India's defense market. Okay, it wants to sell its technological products to India. Like one example we have seen, the air defense system India recently denied. Okay, so they have we have agreement to develop ships, okay, and such things include the naval ships as well. And this country is selling one of the highest number of ships to the world. The shipbuilding industry of South Korea is very, very developed. Whenever you'll be reading about shipping industry, you'll see that how South Korea dominates that. Okay? Shipping industry is being dominated by this. And we have seen military hardware development has been agreed between these two countries. This write-up is in itself the template for your answer. The only thing that you will be required to do is put the example that is most recent, most relevant, and your answer will be ready. Okay? So you'll be talking about these aspects. At this point in time, the example can be the air defense system which was denied. Okay? So that is the most suitable example at this point in time. And if you, a little back, they were providing us artillery guns. That was K9 Vajra. K9 Vajra artillery guns. India had purchased this thing, but this is replaceable. As soon as some other example is available in news, you should focus on that instead of writing old things. Saksham, they have expertise in all the kind of ships, okay, and they have Hindustan Shipyard Limited is collaborating with Hyundai Heavy Industries Corporation Limited for defense products. If you want, you can write this, but as many of other manufacturers are also in talks, so it can, like Majgaon Docks Limited of India, it is also in talks with some of the Korean companies. Kolkata Shipyard is also in talks with Korean companies. Okay, so it can happen that we have some new element to write, but if you want to write some of the names, you can write about Hindustan Shipyard Limited. But pick always whatever is in news. Okay, defense production, of course these two are cooperating, but it is somewhat old. Like I said, Majgaon Docks Limited and Kolkata Shipyard Limited are also in news, and if they fructify something, that becomes more important to write. Okay. So this is the cooperation of defense. Now we can talk about the cultural relations that again will come down to Buddhism only and to movies that are very, very popular in India, especially in northeastern part of the India. The Korean culture is really, really popular. Okay. So the first aspect is Buddhism. The second aspect is Korean culture, that has basically adapted from movies which are very popular in Northeast India. The South Korean movies are very, very popular in northeastern states. And of course, they have taken by storm whole of the Asian movie industry recently, last 4 or 5 years. They have produced some movies which have knocked the door of Oscars as well. Okay. So these are becoming really popular. And of course, our professionals are Indian professionals are carrying Indian culture there. But like I said, these people do not accept us. There are lot of issues. The Koreans do not show acceptance to Indian ways. And hence, this remains a problem area. Indians are more than willing to accept. Of course, probably their developed status force Indians to adapt some of the things they are doing, but they are not very keen to develop this relationship. Of course, our students go there to study as well. Some of the institutes there are very, very popular for pure science related subjects. So Indian students visit Korea to study, but they haven't shown much interest when it comes to relations with India. Okay, so these are the aspects that you need to follow. You can add, if the scope of answer writing is for 250 words, here you can split this defense and security. You can talk about defense deal in one topic, and you can specifically talk about security in the other, where you can talk about Indo-Pacific and the South China problem areas. but mostly you have to focus on this only. Okay. Now we'll be looking at one more important relationship that has started blooming more recently because of the Quad only. Japan we have discussed. Australia, of course. It is the most recent country which has started drifting away from China and coming close to India. The reason being, it was trying to meddle with the political setup of Australia. China was funding a lot amount of money in Australian universities, and there it has created a situation where communist ideology should thrive more. Okay, so protests, criticism of the government, not aligning to the needs of Australia, instead focusing on what the communist China is doing. Some of these factors alienated Australia, and it was afraid that they are changing the mindset of our youth. And if China keeps on doing this thing, then at some point in time, the development, whatever is happening in Australia, will stall. And every student that is studying in those Chinese funded colleges will start talking about the Chinese interests instead of the Australian interest. So China, though it was having a direct investment, a direct share of almost 25% from the Australian money, and indirectly it is said that Chinese money influences the economy of Australia by almost 70%. But still, Australia started drifting away from China. And here, there comes a movement after so many years of India's independence and association with Australia that it looks like things are going to be good between these two countries. Else, whole of the history can tell you that these relations were never warm. In fact, if you are following the news for the last couple of years, you'll also know that there were many attacks on Indians in Australia. So there are a lot of racial abuses against the Indian community residing in Australia. But with the recent changing scenario, of course, optimism is there that these relations can be good, can be warm. So let's see how these relations move forward and try to understand what is beyond for India and Australia together. Okay? So now we'll talk about India and Australia. So if any of you have any kind of query with respect to the relationship with South Korea, then of course you can ask. Yeah, Adi, that was I was talking about. Many of the students face abuses, the cricketers face such thing. Very recently, of course, during a test match, racial slurs were used against one of our most popular player, Cheteshwar Pujara. And one more debutant player as well, right? So most probably Hanuman Bihari, I guess, right? Which saved Indian inning. Who saved Indian inning? So we'll be talking about India and Australia. And Australia and British both were, Australia and India both were British colony. Okay. So in 1940s, there was a movement when both these countries knew that they will be establishing a complete relationship, independent relationship. And British was even aware that at some point in time in near future, they'll have to leave India. So they wanted to make sure that they can establish some kind of at least trade relations in some of the colonies that they have ruled. So in the year 1941 only, British India had established a trade office in Australia. And this was the genesis of this relationship. Okay, but initially some of the thriving universities in Australia wanted to attract students. So 1950s and 1960s, after independence, 1950s, 1960s, Australia sponsored Indian students. Indian students to study in its universities. Okay. So like most of the time this aligned non-aligned issue arises. This was a period of aligned versus non-aligned. So not much cordial relationship. Okay. This was a period when most of the countries were tending to avoid India for its stance, and the only countries which were willing to stay with India were the colonial countries or the Soviet, which has comparatively less support. And if we look at the policy, the aligned versus non-aligned is one thing, but what it did Australia maintained close relationship with China, and hence was soft on Pakistan, because Chinese investments are there in Pakistan and China always supported Pakistan. So the relations were never ever good. Around 2009, China started meddling with the South China Sea. It started talking about the 9-dash line every now and then. And it started talking about how it has control over the South China Sea, which was, of course, a busy trade route, important for Australia as well. So in 2009, Australia signed security agreement with India. But the moment it gave a signal, Australia gave a signal to China that if you'll threat me, I'll go with India. Then China started investing more on the universities. It started focusing on things which can send its ideology to the Australian soil in the form of education to those students. It started investing more on the language studies, history of China, and it created an environment in the universities so that the outside world, the outside population of Australia started seeing those universities as mini China. But still investment was there, so it took time for Australia to understand this thing. But very recently, (2016) onwards, Australia was troubled by Chinese investments or Chinese funding in universities. And 2020, there was a situation where Australia demanded inquiry over origin of COVID-19, and it said that it's Chinese virus, okay, because it started in Wuhan province of China, okay, and now this relationship became bad. Yeah, Yati, it is doing so. China is trying to control the countries by investing in them. It is investing so heavily that it becomes difficult for the country to return back the money. So it says that it will use that area wherever the investment is being done for Chinese purpose. And indirectly it is taking control of those areas. So it is a depth diplomacy. of China. We call it as debt diplomacy. And more recently, in news, we know that Australian journalists have released some of the evidences that it was a Chinese design. If you are following the newspaper, you are very much aware. And after doing this thing, what it did? Australia openly supported India on Ladakh class. Not many countries came openly in support of India. But if you look at Australia, that is traditionally against India. It has a history of going against India. But what it did which no other country can do openly. In fact, our Prime Minister, while addressing the soldiers in Ladakh after the clashes, did not use the word China, but Australia did. We always say that one country is troubling us. We don't say that China is troubling us. But Australia did that for us. This country went beyond the other relations. So it is time that we can think of improving the relationship with Australia. Our traditional friends did not had courage to blame China directly. India, as a matter of policy, never says the name of China. It says one state is a problematic state. India itself has a policy of indicative expression of problems, but Australia came forward. Yeah, Divam, they have honored Prime Minister Modi. Many of the countries have honored him, and it is great for our nation. It shows that how India as a nation is becoming important, because if head of the state is being honored, it is not a personal achievement. It is being done because India as a country has become really important because of its vast size, because of its vast market, because of the human resource that it has. Of course, our present Prime Minister is more expressive. So these award ceremonies become more popular. But if we look at someone like Manmohan Singh ji, our ex-Prime Minister, he was also honored by many of the states. And papers were also writing about it, but he never over focused on this thing, right? Neither newspapers or news channels focused on such things at that point in time. But now it is COVID situation. We have nothing to do. So we'll be talking about such events. And very recently, so Australia has emerged as a good friend. And it will stay like that for a coming period of time, for a longer period as well. Because it has condemned China in each and every respect, and it keeps on attacking China. So the policy is very clear that China is not going to stay priority for Australia. They had lot of debates in their parliament as well. And finally, we know that Australia is a friend. Okay? So now we'll look at some of the pillars which are important, some of the aspects which are important. So we'll start with the economic aspect. Not much to talk about, as we know that the relationships were not much warm between these two countries very recently as well. Now, with the coming of Quad, USA tried, and now Australia is coming closer to India. In fact, if you talk about Prime Minister's visit to Australia, it was almost 30 years since any of our uh, representative, the head of the state, visited Australia. So it was never ever our priority. In 2018, Australia has announced an Indian economic strategy. 2018, Indian economic strategy by 2035 from Australia. Okay. So this is the time and the agenda for this engagement was set that we are looking today. The things that we see today was set in 2018. This strategy paper has ensured that we'll be focusing on, of course, economic ties. That is one of the most important pillars. If whole of the world is interested in Indian market, of course Australia is, right? So they also talked about some geostrategic engagements. And as we have seen, the Indian diaspora lives there but is not well received by the Australian people, and many students were attacked, many of the people, professionals were attacked. So in this policy, Australia has made clear that it will also give cultural focus so that both these countries can understand the culture of each other and our relations can improve. Okay? So basically, cultural focus, the soft power diplomacy, was a declared principle in 2018. And now we are discussing the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. We are discussing Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. Okay. So we are looking forward to upgrade our relationship. And Australia intends to reduce its dependence on China by focusing on Indian market. Okay, so here comes a point, here comes a time when we'll be seeing more of engagements of India with Australia. So now is the time when you'll be focusing on whatever news is appearing. Whatever is happening becomes important now because there is a clear-cut policy, a declared policy. And Australia came openly to support India recently. So we'll be seeing a lot of cooperation between these two countries. So you need to focus on this relationship. Now the other important aspect in economy is the resources of Australia. You know, there were a lot of protests against Adani. So India has interest in Australian resources. Okay. So specifically two resources. One is coal and another is uranium. So these two resources are important for India. First one is coal and uranium. Coal, it has 14% of world. In terms of production, of course, it is third. In terms of reserves, it is third. Uranium, largest reserves. And third biggest producer. Okay, but this position will change. So keep on checking. You have to check this aspect. Reserves, of course, until and unless suddenly someone finds lot of uranium, it will not change in recent times. So we are also interested in resources. So this is the aspect which is more important, the economic aspect. Now the other important aspect is defense. We'll be talking about that. If we talk about defense, the first thing is Quad. We are cooperating in many aspects. We have also signed an agreement on cyber security. As the trade routes between these two countries are infested by piracy. So both these countries have also signed an agreement on maritime cooperation. So there is a joint declaration on maritime cooperation. The piracy was a big issue in the Indo-Pacific region. So defense-related cooperations are also happening, and they will engage more in future. You'll see. You'll definitely see that there is more of engagement. Like when we were talking about the Malabar exercise, that means Japan was invited to join. We talked about now Australia is also willing, and maybe they'll join, right? So this is important. So these two aspects are the most important aspects that you have to see. And if you want to talk about the diaspora, of course, you know, it is recently, it was in news. So diaspora is like more than 7 lakh people of India reside in Australia. And there is nothing much. You have to highlight this aspect that there is racism issues. Okay. There is racist issues related to this. There are problem areas, so you need to give some solution, and like okay, Devam, you have class again at 2. So this is a problem thing. Why you guys are not getting a gap between 2 lectures? Okay, we'll see. So I'll be explaining this only. So I'll leave you guys so that you can have a break before starting of the next lecture. So you have to talk about these issues whenever you are writing anything about this, but do not overwhelmingly focus on the things. Ravi, okay, it is at 2:30, Divam. It is at 2:30, so we'll continue for some more time. If the classes is at 2:30, then we should utilize this time, right? So whenever you are writing an answer on this topic, okay, so we'll continue with this thing. So it is with 2:30, so we have to make sure that we are discussing some of the important things. So with respect to Australia, always focus on the things the relationship was like, because 2-3 years of improvement, is it no such big improvement? and we don't know when Australia will start behaving like before, because they have done that thing for almost 70, 80 years. 1941, we talked about. Ravi, yeah, you can write that India and Australia should engage more to diffuse the situation. And like you'll be writing in conclusion that as Australia has a declared policy of cultural connect in 2018, it is its responsibility to make their citizens aware of respecting other cultures. So, same information you have to present in a better way. In your conclusion, you will be writing that you have to show that there is optimism. You'll talk that it is important that the conditions which has helped both these two nations come together can help in moving forward, which can create a relationship that is long lasting, cooperative and beneficial to both the nations. ठीक है, वैसी चीजों पे फोकस करना है आपको. नाउ आई टेक लेट्स से 2 बजे ही आप लोग कह रहे हैं, तो how will approach some other relations? I'll give a brief about this thing, and I'll leave you 5, 7, 10 minutes early. Don't be worried, Saksham, if it is like some of you are like 2:30 and some of you are like 2. But still, we'll be talking about the relationship of India with Africa. Okay. Next, we have to see Africa, but Africa as a whole, 54 countries, all of them are not important, though we are engaging with 53 countries out there. Okay. But all of them are not important. If somebody is appearing this year, then you have to focus on the Horn of Africa. And even within this, Ethiopia is more of our interest. And why? That we'll see. Directly not related to India, but is still that is important for India. We'll be focusing on that area. Racist issue is an issue when there is discrimination based on the races, the color of skin. Like Australia has a white population, white race. Indians are often referred as brown people, and Africans, they are referred as black people. So there is a tendency of racial superiority. It means if somebody is white, they are superior. Okay. So there is division based on the color. Like in India, we have divisions based on caste. Everybody born with a brain, a nose, 2 eyes, mouth, same blood, but still this caste thing, what it is doing, there is differentiation which has no scientific basis, right? The human ability should define the human existence. Instead, for thousands of years, we have created a social construct which is disturbing the human reason and is discriminatory, is torturous for some population, some part of the population, some people. So it should stop. Yeah, Devam. So it's been in news for lot of reasons, right? So but it is a country where we cannot talk about India and Ethiopia, like I was talking about. No certain relationship. But there can be a question ki why Horn of Africa is important for India, right? Such kind of question can appear. Some small question on this area directly in the prelims. So you have to identify these focus areas. So definitely we'll be talking about these aspects in our next lecture. As everybody is writing again and again, even Hemant mentioned and Asu, of course, everybody is telling me that the classes will start at 2. So I'm willing to take some of the questions from you. Of course, even if one candidate is like he wants to gain more, I'll be more than willing to give. Else, India and Africa will be talking about tomorrow. And Ravi, no, tomorrow is Sunday, right? So on Sunday, I'll not be having the lecture. On Monday, most probably. So, any question, anybody? If you have any questions, any this like for answer writing, I have said I'll be telling you. I'll take. Subham, this relationship with Australia was not good with us. The reason being that same reasons. They have a small population, they have resource. We Indians reach everywhere. We are skilled also, we are unskilled also. So we control the jobs. And as their population is increasing, they want that jobs. But we Indians बचपन से ही सिखाते हैं खूब पढ़ो, तो कुछ लोग खूब पढ़ते भी हैं. They are very much skilled, तो skilled job ले ली. Unskilled वाली job जो वो बिना पढ़ के ले सकते हैं, वो भी Indians ले लिए. So we are seen as people who are controlling their opportunities. So a general public hates us. And also, जब बाहर से गए हैं, you went from here, so you do not have opportunity of owning a big house. So initially, what we live at small places, tidy areas, not clean, not having amenities. So they feel like we are inferior. So both these causes have started a culture where they have started disliking us. So this is the only reason. And Cold War era, Australia was aligned with USA, Britain, which was against India. So these causes have cumulatively given effect where Australia is not having good relations with India. Yeah, Proteus IR will be completed within this month only, and most probably within a week only. Not much is left in this thing. Small topics are left, not big ones. And Yati, that's great that you are understanding everything. And make sure that you all are writing answers as well. It is very, very important. So, Saksham, I had answered your question. If anybody else has any question, you can ask. Else, we'll start from Monday. From where, and we'll be starting with this, India and Africa. And we'll be talking about specifically related to tension on Nile River, because of which this area was in news. It will take care of some of the things for prelims and of course mains. And this is going to remain in news, this Horn of Africa. So we'll be focusing on that. So it seems that all of you understood whatever we had to discuss. So I'll take your leave. Have your meal. Nobody, Yasu, nobody won the Gaza war. It wasn't a war. Okay? It did not escalate into full-fledged war. Gaza, Hama is claiming that they have won. Like Pakistan was claiming that they won Kargil war. The reason being, because Israel accepted the ceasefire, so they claimed that they won. India accepted the ceasefire, so Pakistan claimed that they won. So they know that they cannot win, but claiming that they won gives them some kind of satisfaction. So they are doing that thing only. Okay? So I think these are the only questions that you had to put forward. So study well. Eat something because your classes will start soon, the next one. And we'll meet on Monday and we'll try to finish Africa and Horn of Africa. Okay? Have a great time. Stay healthy and blessed. Good afternoon.